may feel like what's become business as usual. Congress, once again, working to pass a budget deal to avoid a government shutdown. Right now, the U.S. is operating under a two-part funding plan that expires January 19th and February 2nd. Lawmakers reached a spending agreement over the weekend, but will likely need more time to pass any measure due to opposition from Republicans. Now, that means that leaders may need to pass a short-term funding bill in order to avoid a shutdown. To break this down further, I want to bring in Bobby Kogan. He's the Senior Director of Federal Budget Policy at the Progressive Center for American Progress. Bobby, thank you for being here. So let's talk about this short-term spending bill possibility. How likely is it that is the direction that Congress will go?
Chris, thanks so much for having me on. Definitely, we are going to need to see a CR. The House, the Senate, and the Senate and House appropriators are working as quickly as they can to be consistent with the deal that was just announced. But the issue is that it takes time. So a CR is needed to prevent a shutdown. Whether that will happen will come down to the internal House politics. There are easily the votes in both the House and the Senate to pass a short-term continuing resolution. The only issue really at stake here is the internal politics of the House Republican caucus.
Which are always interesting to watch. And House Speaker Mike Johnson's in an interesting situation because I do remember in November him saying, no more short-term spending deals yet. Here we are. So as far as what's on the table, besides shutting down the government and relying on Democrats for support, what options does Mike Johnson have?
Well, there aren't really any other options. Theoretically, the appropriators could rush the deal. The kind of rule of thumb that most folks have is it takes about 6 weeks if everything is kind of pre-negotiated to go from start to finish to write approps bills. Obviously, this deal was announced just over the weekend, so that's less than 6 weeks. Now, approps have been working kind of all year long in some capacity, but there really isn't anything you can do other than shut down or do a CR. The one point that I'd make, though, is there's a difference between kind of like kicking the can down the road because you have no idea what you're doing versus saying, okay, we have a deal, we're working towards a deal, we just need a little bit more time to kind of hammer out the final details. And that's what a CR presumably would be in this case, unless everything falls apart.
But even with that, say they move it forward to fund until a date I saw was sometime in March. Realistically speaking, what are the chances of having a long-term deal this year?
I
know you don't have a crystal ball. That's always the crystal ball question.
No, it's right. The difficulty is the internal House Republican politics. All year long, there have been the votes to do the deal the deal that was struck over the weekend is pretty similar to the deal that was struck 6 months ago. There have always been the votes for that deal. There are easily the votes to make it happen. What there might not be the votes to happen is doing that deal and also the speaker gets to keep his job. And so the struggle right here, like we ought to see a deal because you have more than half the House of Representatives and more than half the Senate and the president willing to do that deal. The difficulty is just the internal politics. So I think that we will see a deal because there are easily the votes for them. And there really realistically isn't a path outside of something that looks like that deal. But that doesn't mean that the most extreme members won't try to force something else, and then that we could see a shutdown.
Right, and maybe we see Mike Johnson no longer being Speaker of the House. And with that, I mean, I remember when Mike Johnson became Speaker, he was seen as kind of the conservatives' conservative when he took over for Kevin McCarthy, yet he's in this position where it feels like he's doing exactly what his predecessor did. Just generally speaking, what does that say about the reality of that job?
It is Democrats control the Senate and the presidency, and then the margin in the House for Republicans is razor thin. I think given that there are a lot there's a lot that Republicans could be happy about. They got very real, meaningful spending cuts, but at the end of the day, it wasn't enough for a lot of them. The job is it is very difficult to hold your caucus together, especially if the caucus is kind of diverse in what it wants. You have people who are happy to take the fact that they basically got a freeze in non-defense spending and run with it. And then you have people who say that wasn't remotely enough. And I'd just say one of the difficulties here is that the deal that was reached 6 months ago, a lot of the terms of it were made in secret and were kept from members of the Republican and Democratic caucus. And I think that has made the situation right now worse, that a lot of people had expectations that did not comport with what I think many of us could see was the writing on the wall because they didn't know all the terms of the deal.
Yeah, and we'll see how it plays out now in just the next couple of weeks. Bobby Kogan with the Center for American Progress. Thank you for your insight.